today. Hang on a second. So give me 1 second to get myself set up here. Let's do that. Okay. I can see some of you. Yeah, my name is Evan Kravitz. I'm a career advisor for Arapahoe Community College. In non-COVID times, you would find my office in the advising wing of the Littleton campus. But right now, we're doing everything virtual, which makes sense. But should you need to reach out to me for any kind of career advice or networking, informational interviews, things like that, my email address is there at the bottom, and I'll also put it up on the screen when we finish tonight. But thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm really excited I've presented to this group before. I think some of you may have been in the last presentation I did. But as someone who has transitioned careers myself, who has been laid off and has gone through that whole thing, I have enormous respect for what you're all going through right now. So I've been there, not with COVID, but I've been there, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the career transitions I've done in my career because I want you to know that I'm authentic, that everything that I'm espousing here is stuff that I really believe in and that has worked for me. So some of this will be a little bit of my career journey, but the majority of it is going to be focused on informational interviews, the importance of career networking, and LinkedIn, which I'm a really big fan of. So moving on, when we're working with students and we're trying to talk about the career planning cycle, we generally divide it into 4 different sections. So part 1 is knowing yourself. It's having an understanding of what your personality type is, what your aptitudes are, what your interests are. And then with a lot of career assessments that we do these days, like with Myers-Briggs or U Science, we're able to get a gauge of your aptitudes and interests, personality type, and we can match that to all different kinds of careers. But even when you find a career that you're really in love with, you're in that exploration phase, and that's where I really focus a lot of my work on job shadowing and informational interviews. I view informational interviews as absolutely critical in really understanding the ins and outs of a particular career or a particular job. And to me, in my opinion, and again, this comes from experience, but the best career research comes from those who really can tell you exactly what you're looking to get into. So I've used this example before. If I had a student come to me and they said, I want to be an astronaut. It's what I've dreamed of my whole life. I can't imagine doing anything else. It's what I want to do. Okay. As a career counselor, I know nothing about what it takes to be an astronaut. I know that a lot of astronauts have military experience, but I don't know typically what kind of college degrees they have, and I don't know what it pays and all that stuff. So what I would be doing then as a career counselor is really kind of trying to move heaven and earth to get that student connected with someone who works at NASA, because only someone who works at NASA or someone who's an astronaut can really tell that student, here's what it's like. Here's a typical day for me. And a lot of people think, well, I'll never get an astronaut to talk to me, but you never know until you try. And you'd be surprised how far you can get at the media relations office at NASA. But that's a story for another time. But after you've explored the career field or fields of interest, it's time to make that decision about, okay, am I going to pursue this? And then it's time to move on and execute the plan. But we're going to focus mainly on the exploration side of things tonight, because a lot of you are career transitioners now, looking to get into new fields. And so a lot of what you're doing is exploration. And that's where career conversations like informational interviews are really critical. So in terms of exploring your options, there's a ton of tools out there that you can use. LinkedIn is the one we're going to focus on tonight, but there are also some other really great websites that can give you background information on all kinds of careers that you're thinking about or that you're interested in and want to know more about. But again, we're going to focus mainly on LinkedIn tonight. The importance of networking. I read this great article from Top Resume and really kind of hammered down the key points of why networking is so important. And I want to go over that. First, networking will help you develop and improve your skill set, stay on top of the latest trends in your industry, keep a pulse on the job market, meet prospective mentors, partners, and clients, and gain access to the necessary resources that will foster your career development. But it's really in that develop and improve yourself that you can really get out of networking and meeting people who work in career fields of interest to you. Further, if you're looking to make a career change, which I know a lot of you are doing, and I have experience with that too. If you're looking to make a career change, your professional network can support you by helping you find connections in industry you are trying to break into, or helping you find leads for jobs at specific company. So for those of you who are looking to transition into a completely new career field, that whole process can be daunting. Further, it can be really tough to know, well, where do I even begin? Because I'm looking to transition into a career field that I've never been in before and that was new to me. And so that's why the networking can really help to give you a head start and help keep you on the path when you're going into a new career field or you're thinking about a career transition. There is no one size fits all when it comes to network. This is very important. Different people are successful using different networking tactics. The key is to try out a number of different networking strategies to discover what best suits you. So before COVID hit, when I in working with students, I would encourage them, when you are able to set up an informational interview, take the person out for coffee. All right. It's not a formal job interview. And that's really important to know. It's a conversation. So a conversation over coffee is usually pretty familiar turf for a lot of people. But even if you tend to be more of an introvert, you can do informational interviews over the phone. We can do it in a virtual setting. The point is to find a method of doing informational interviews that works best for you. And again, in non-COVID times, I'm a really big proponent of meeting the person for coffee and having a great conversation. And finally, it's never too early or too late to invest in your network. The best way to improve your networking skills is to put yourself out there and give it a try. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. That's the same with the example from NASA that I mentioned a moment ago. You have nothing to lose by calling up NASA and talking to someone who might be able to point you in the right direction. The worst that can happen is they don't have anyone for you, which would be hard to believe, but you never know until you try. So I've mentioned informational interviews a couple times, and what are informational interviews? Well, an informational interview is an informal career conversation that you can have with someone working in an occupation of interest to you. It's not a formal job interview. So when you're having a career conversation with someone in a field of interest to you, you're not going to them to apply for a job. You're not having a formal interview. It's a career conversation. And so when I'm encouraging students to go and do informational interviews, I typically would tell them, don't get dressed up. You don't need to wear a suit. Go business casual, khakis, button-down shirt, or something casual for women. But there's no job on the line. It's an informal career conversation where you're just trying to understand a little bit more about a particular career field that you're going into, and the person that you're working with is in a position to help you better understand how to navigate. And informational interviews with people who work in industries can also tell you what to avoid, what mistakes that maybe they made along the way. Across many career conversations, you will find that most people actually enjoy taking a few moments out of their day to reflect on their professional life and give advice to someone with an interest in their field. In other words, pay it forward. I have found, and I'll show you tonight how I work with students to meet with alumni of Arapahoe Community College, that I have found that alumni and career professionals like the idea of giving back. Someone helped them get a foot in the door. And if they could do that for someone else, they're more than welcome to. They're more than happy to, I'm sorry. So a lot of it's about paying it forward. And once you're all established in your new roles and your new careers, I'm sure you're going to do the same for the next crop of students, or the next next group of people that's coming out looking for information on how to get into that particular career field. And again, LinkedIn is a huge tool for this, and we're gonna show you a little bit of LinkedIn in a minute. So I wanted to talk a little bit about lessons I've learned, because every career move I've made, the big ones, have all been facilitated by informational interviews. And so I want to give you two examples of how that worked in my particular career. I'm not holding myself up as a success story. It's not that at all. It's just I really want to impart to you that this stuff actually works. So when I went into college in 1993 at the University of Georgia, I wanted to work at CNN. That was like my sole reason for living. I wanted to be at CNN as a journalist in the newsroom doing TV production. So I entered the journalism program at the University of Georgia, which is only about an hour away from CNN headquarters in Atlanta. So the great thing was that all these CNN producers and reporters and executives and anchors and what have you were always coming up to our campus to work with us on our own student news program. I found out that this guy, his name was Bob Fernand, that this guy was coming up to the campus to work with us. At the time, Bob Fernand was the executive vice president of CNN Headline News, which is now HLN. And before that, he was president of CNN News. So this is a big deal. And so the way I remember it is I got his email address from my professor. I sent him an email and I said something like, Mr. Fernand, there's any chance I could take you out for lunch when you come up here? I have a million questions about life and work at CNN. And he wrote back and he said, yep, let's do it. Holy crap. So now I'm having a cheeseburger with this titan of CNN, this big legend within the walls of CNN. And so after over this cheeseburger, I asked him some of the following questions. Why did you want to be a journalist? What do you like most about working at CNN? What do you like least about working at CNN? How do you handle the pressure of live TV? What does it take to succeed at CNN? And what more can I do in college to make me more competitive for an entry-level position at CNN? He answered every single one of those questions and more. And my memory of it is that the conversation was over about an hour and a half. Really long conversation. And at the end of the conversation, he looked at me and he said, call me when you graduate. I did. And I got a job at CNN 2 weeks after I graduated college. And that's me in the newsroom. Here's the important thing here. He didn't pay someone off to hire me. He didn't go to human resources and say, you must hire Evan or else you're fired. It wasn't that at all. But because I wasn't like a top journalism student, I was okay, but I wasn't like brilliant. But because I did that informational interview with Bob Fernand, I knew exactly what to expect in the interview in terms of I knew what types of schedules people worked at CNN. You know, you worked overnights, weekends, weeknights, holidays. I knew that the money wasn't too great. I knew, you know, what level of knowledge of current events that they wanted you to have. I knew, you know, that it was this, you know, if you can't handle deadline pressure, stay away. I knew all that stuff. And I really aced the interview. So none of that would have been possible without the informational interview with Bob Fernand. And the only thing I had to lose by asking him was him not responding to the email. And it cost me, what, $8-9 to take him out to lunch at the time. I did this again in 2013 when I got laid off from CNN. And now I'm sitting there like, I don't know what I want to do, but I can tell you this, I don't want to work in news anymore. I was done. But the problem is that I had been doing the journalism thing in CNN for so long that I didn't know what else I could possibly be qualified to do. And so my mental health actually really went downhill because in addition to being laid off, I had no plan. And I wasn't able to say, you know, my buddy Bob, he left CNN and went to do this and do that. And that he's like, I didn't know anyone that was going back to school in their late 30s. So in my world, whatever it is you majored in college or whatever it is you did for the majority of your life is basically what you did for the rest of your life, or some variation on it. And so I met with a career counselor for the first time in my life. And over the next couple of years, well, not a couple of years, over the next year or so, I did informational interviews with more than 30 people. And as I was talking to all these people, and some of them I was able to find some people who were laid off from CNN and now we're doing something completely different. I found people that were fired from CNN and were doing something completely different. But I started talking to a lot of different career changers, And I started to be able to put a roadmap together of how I can make a career transition. And for me, I had always loved my college experience. I absolutely loved college. So I started to hone in on the fact that wouldn't it be great to work in a higher education setting? Well, what would I do there? And as I started talking to more people, a lot of my informational interview contacts mentioned, you'd be really good at career advising because you have all this career experience in private industry. And so then I started researching working as a career counselor in higher education and just did one informational interview after the other. So people from all walks of life who I started connecting with. And the beautiful part about the informational interviews was that at the end of each interview, at the end of each conversation, the person would usually say, you know what, keep in touch with me. Or you need to talk to my friend Nancy, who works at this department. She'd have some great insight too. And now your network is growing. Your network of contacts is growing. So in 2016, I actually graduated with a master's degree from the University of Denver and got a job at Front Range Community College as a career counselor, and then was able to transition over to ACC as a career counselor. Again, I was not an all-star student. I was not a fantastic journalist. I was okay, and I was an okay student, but I wasn't really someone that you'd be rolling out the red carpet for. But because I spoke to so many people, because I asked really inquisitive questions, and because I tried to really do as much as I could to put a roadmap together, I was able to make it happen. So when I'm encouraging you, if not pushing you towards informational interviews for career networking, it's coming from a good place, I promise. Examples of informational interview questions, like the ones that I asked Bob Fernand over lunch. Here are some questions that I would recommend, or I'm sorry, these are actually the questions I was asking in the informational interviews I did when I was making the career transition. What influenced your career and academic decisions? Do you enjoy your work? I find that it's really important to ask that question because that'll give you some sort of picture as to whether or not this is an industry that spawns happy people, or that you wake up every morning and you're excited to go to work. Now, the caveat with that is that there are people you'll talk to during informational interviews that will say, don't do this for a career. You will not like it. You'll hate it. I wish I wasn't doing it. That's good information to have. But it's important to remember that that is that person's experience with that career move. And you're really going to need to talk to more people within that career field to really get an objective look of how, are people generally happy working in this type of career? I would ask them, how did you get your first job out of college? So I would be very interested in knowing, okay, what were some of the moves you made early on to help you get a foot in the door? What is a typical day like for you? Huge question, because the student that wants to be an astronaut, I don't know what astronauts do on a daily basis. Do they just study astronomy? Do they study engineering? Are they building engines and rockets? What are they doing? And so that question is important too, because it's going to give you a lot more insight into the type of daily activities of a career that are awaiting for you. Another important question, what don't you like about your career? Do you make enough money to live comfortably? You're not asking for their exact salary. They might reveal it to you, but what you're asking them is, are you able to pay your bills, or are you living paycheck to paycheck? Are you able to go out for dinner once in a while? So it's really important, because that person can also say, here's what I would do differently, maybe in negotiating with, or here's what I made when I first started out, but here's how I got to this salary level. What advice can you give me if this is the career I want? And almost of paramount importance, can I keep in touch with you? Now, again, since it's not a formal job interview, there's no job on the line. But you better bet your butt that that person's going to keep you in mind if they hear of something that's open, either at their company or at a friend's company or something like that. Oh, I met with this guy a couple weeks ago, Evan Kravitz. He's got a degree in this field, and I was really impressed with him, and I'm going to give him a call and tell him to look into this. You can't put a price tag on that. So those are the types of informational interview questions that are just some of the many that you can ask. Again, I can't say this enough. It is an informal conversation. So in all of the conversations I had with all of those people, see if I can get back there. I typically met them for coffee or met them at their office. I was never wearing a tie. I would usually wear a button-down shirt and khakis. And I would go in there, not necessarily with a resume, but with a pen and paper, a pad and paper, because I took down tons of notes. And if you do have a resume, you could bring it with you and say, can I show you my resume? I'd really like to get your perspective on, does it look like the kind of resume that I should have for this type of industry? Or do you see anything that you might recommend I change? And I'm going to stop real quick just to see if anyone has any questions.
No, it's great information.
Thank you. Okay. So let's talk about LinkedIn. Yeah, I had to make sure I was in the right spot. I have a lot of students who I work with, and it's a community college. So the great thing about community college is that 1 hour from 1 hour to the next, I'm working with 20-year-olds, teenagers, people in their 40s, people in their 50s and 60s, a totally diverse demographic. But what I have found is that when I mention LinkedIn, there are a lot of students who are hesitant to get involved because they don't want anything to do with social media. They don't want to be part of the Facebook world, the Twitter world, the Instagram world. I totally understand that, and I totally respect it. LinkedIn is different. So I'm going to break out of this real quick to kind of show you some things about LinkedIn. So let me hit escape here. Let's go over here. Okay. So this is LinkedIn. LinkedIn looks a lot like Facebook. All right. If you know Facebook, you know that you have what's called a news feed where your people will post different things. And I ate toast this morning, or Trump this or Trump that. With LinkedIn, you also have a news feed, but the things that come up on my news feed are topics that I'm interested in, that I've entered into LinkedIn and said, these are things I want to know more about. So on my news feed, get a lot of news about higher education, employment trends, things like that. I don't, in all my years on LinkedIn, I don't think I've ever had one kind of political message come across. I don't have anything against that stuff, but that's on Facebook. So LinkedIn's a little bit different in that regard. However, like Facebook, you also have a profile page. I'm going to go to mine. So the difference between the profile page on Facebook and on LinkedIn is that on LinkedIn, this is essentially your resume. So the first thing with LinkedIn is that research shows that if you have a profile with a headshot, the chances of someone landing on your or looking at your profile go up. I can't tell you why that is, but that's the research I've seen. So a lot of people look at professional headshots done. I didn't do that. I took a selfie and I changed it to black and white to make it look a little cool, and that's my headshot. If you have the means to get a professional headshot, do it. It's a great thing to do. But if not, just have someone take a picture of you in front of a bookcase or something like that. You want to avoid the funny stuff, okay? A picture of you with a beer in your hand is not the picture for LinkedIn. Just something really straightforward and basic, just a picture of you. And then behind the headshot is what they call the wallpaper. And you can have a wallpaper image if you want, or you can leave it blank. That part is not, I'm not so much a stickler on, but if you are going to use a wallpaper picture, make it something relevant or something unique to you. So I chose this map and a compass because I help people find career direction. So right under my name is what we call the headline. And this is where this is one of your first opportunities to tell the world either what you're looking to do or where your expertise is or where your education's at. There are a ton of different ways to do this headline. And I'm honestly still learning about it, but I decided to fill mine with keywords from my industry. So career counselor, okay, that's my title. I'm a student affairs higher education professional. So I specifically wanted to mention student affairs as being my realm of expertise. Career transition navigator. I help people with career transitions. Career networking and informational interviews. I'm passionate about it. And MBTI certified, which is a certification that a lot of career counselors have and it's looked at as a plus in the career counseling world. Again, there's a ton of different ways you could do this. You could do accounting student, Arapahoe Community College, or you could be a little bit more creative and say emerging accounting expert. There's all types of ways you can do this. To show you, and I also want to make the point that a lot of what I do on my profile is from researching and looking at other people's profiles. There's no need for you to reinvent the wheel. Look at what other people in similar careers are doing on their LinkedIn profiles. There are 3 million articles on LinkedIn out there, all of which will give you great information and pointers on how to put together a LinkedIn profile. But having those keywords from your industry is really important. Even if you don't have a specific job that you're applying for at the moment, it's still enough to have a job posting from the industry you're looking to go into. So for me, again, with career counseling, MBTI is a huge thing. Helping students through career transitions, huge. Doing informational interviews, resumes. So I'm trying to get all those keywords into my profile, and I'm always updating mine. I'm always changing things around based on what I'm seeing other people do and finding out what has worked for them. There's a ton that you can do on LinkedIn. There's all this stuff on the side. I'm not going to be able to get through all of it tonight. And to be honest with you, a lot of it I'm still learning. But I'm going to show you what I think are the most important parts. The other thing I would mention is LinkedIn is free. There are, however, there's the premium plan, there's the platinum plan, there's all these different levels of LinkedIn that you can get. You don't need any of that. The free version of LinkedIn that I'm showing you tonight is perfectly fine and more than suitable for career search, career exploration. If you have the money, there are some great features on LinkedIn Premium. For instance, you're able to see exactly who has looked at your profile. Whereas on the free version, I think what you get told is, well, 15 people looked at your profile, but we're not going to tell you who they are. So with the premium, you can actually see the specific people that looked at your profile. Anyway, the majority of the world just uses the free version of LinkedIn. So beneath the headline and the pictures, there's this area that's called About. And this is just like on your resume, where many of you have a professional summary or an overview of qualifications. That's basically what this is. Some people will do it as a couple bullet points to provide a brief overview of your expertise and your knowledge and your skills and your education. Other people might do it in paragraph format, which is what I did. Even mine, I think, is a little too long, and I'm actually in the process of rewriting it to make it maybe 7 or 8 sentences. You have to ask yourself, how much do people really, how much time does someone want to really invest in reading about my whole entire life? In the About section, I just think it's really critical to give an overview or to give a glimpse at what you'll see in my profile is 20 years of experience in network broadcast journalism, blah, 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 blah. So this About section is really important. As we scroll down, in my profile area, this is essentially my resume. You would see a lot of this same information on my actual paper resume. Again, all different kinds of ways that you can provide that information. I'm using a bullet point format. Other people might use write like a short little paragraph, maybe 5 or 6 sentences, explaining, the gist of what you did. Whatever you choose, make sure that you have the keywords from your industry in your profile, because when people do when people do talent recruiting, the only way that they could basically look through 30 million LinkedIn profiles, probably more than that, is to use algorithms so that the computer is looking for specific LinkedIn profiles that have specific keywords. Very critical. The other thing about LinkedIn is that it's really easy to put a profile together, because what you're doing is you're basically filling in boxes. So here's the title. All right, I'm a career pathways counselor. I don't need employment type. I work at a Arapahoe Community College. You're just filling in boxes, and then you're putting all the information in, and then you click save. Also, I want to step back for 1 second. I want to go back up to the top. You'll see that there's this contact info area. your contact info, if you don't want people to see your actual contact information, you can put it, you can restrict it. And you might only want to give your contact information to people that you connect with on LinkedIn. So once you're a connection with me on my profile, if you click contact info, here's my personal email, here's my cell phone number. So you do have control over how people are going to contact you. You'll get a notice on your profile. There's a little messaging area right up here that we'll talk about in a little bit, where ding, there's a message, or you've got a connect request from this person, and then you can go look at their profile and see what they're all about, and is this someone that you want to connect with? So there is some security there. But again, what you're seeing here is my resume. I decided to add some pictures. There's some videos that I produced that I have links to. But a lot of this is what you would see on my resume. I think people typically go into a little bit more depth on LinkedIn. I think that's fine to do. My actual paper resume is about 2 pages. This would be like 15 pages. But there's all kinds of different ways that you can do this. And then at the bottom, I have my education section. So I've listed where I got my bachelor's degree and a couple of the things I did in college. And then the more important part for me was, here's where I got my master's, and here's the different areas of student affairs that I studied in my master's program. Again, I'm working to get those keywords into my profile. Another great thing about LinkedIn is that you can also ask former colleagues, managers, supervisors to write recommendations for you. So if I want to ask my boss right now for a recommendation, or if she would write a recommendation, I'll just click ask for a recommendation, type in her email address, and she'll get a note saying, Evan Kravitz would or the note for me would be, Shari, do you mind writing a recommendation for me? Here's the job I'm applying for. A lot of cool stuff that you can do with LinkedIn. And there are a ton more categories that you can add to your feed. If you see add profile section at the top, all these different areas of LinkedIn that you can add. I know if LinkedIn is this, I know this much about it, but I'm always learning on LinkedIn. But these, to me, are the basics. When you're putting your profile together, even when you're putting a resume together, one of the daunting things about putting a resume together is that, how do I describe what I've done in the past? Like, how do I decide what I did as a receptionist? There's a terrific website that you can use for resumes and LinkedIn. It's called ONET Online. It's a really ugly website, but it's one of the greatest websites in the history of all mankind. So on ONET Online, this is a website that was created by the United States Labor Department. In the occupation search bar, if I'm trying to figure out how to describe what I did as a receptionist, I'm just going to type in receptionist. All right, so I typed it in. What ONET does is it's going to give you a list of what, there's got to be like 20 different job titles that are connected to receptionist. You want to pick the one that sounds closest to it. We lucked out receptionist and information clerks at the top. When you click on it, ONET's going to give you a list of, okay, here are the typical tasks that a receptionist does. You can use all this for your resume and for LinkedIn. Here's the typical technology that most receptionists use in their job. There might be things on here that you didn't even think about. Like, yeah, Microsoft Excel and Adobe Premiere, whatever. Here's the knowledge that that people who work as receptionists typically need to have command of, skills, abilities. Here are all the keywords from your industry. And so again, when you're putting, one of the most daunting things about LinkedIn or resumes is, crap, how do I describe what I did as a junior accountant at whatever company? So you can use ONET to help you with that. ONET is phenomenal for career research. If we scroll down a little bit more in the education section, it's going to show us that the vast majority of receptionists have just a high school diploma. There's a smaller percentage that might have an associate's degree. And then you can even look at salary information for Colorado down here. It's a phenomenal website. I highly, highly recommend it. I use it every day to help students describe what they did either as a sales associate at Best Buy or as a senior financial advisor at a Fortune 500 company, whatever. It's just a terrific website. Let me stop again real quick and ask if anyone has any questions about ONET.
Hey, Evan. So I don't have any questions about ONET. I did have a question about the LinkedIn profile. Did you want to save that question for later?
No, go ahead and ask now. That's fine.
Okay, yeah. So if you scroll back up to the top of your profile there, so for somebody like me that has less life experience and is still in college, and I might have a few certifications and stuff like that, but would you suggest waiting to create that account until you actually have some letters to put behind your name, or would you say just kind of go for it and put there that you're a student? Or
That's a phenomenal question, and it's a really good question. And the answer is do your profile now, because you don't have to have 15, 20 years of experience to have a profile. If right now you're focused on education, in getting those certifications or getting those degrees, that's valuable information to put into LinkedIn, because when you reach out to people on LinkedIn, they're immediately going to go and look at your profile because they want to know something about you too. So regardless if you've had 50 years of experience or you're currently a student, all of that experience has a place in LinkedIn without a doubt. Are you going to, which school, are you an ACC student?
yeah,
Daniel, and Daniel, what's your field of study?
Physical therapist assistant.
Perfect. Here's how you're going to love this. So Daniel is studying to be a physical therapy assistant. If Daniel came to me and said, this is what I want to do as a career, I know no one who works in this career field. Furthermore, I know what a PTA does, but how do you get that first job after college? I just don't know anyone in the industry. What I would say to Daniel is, no, you know a ton of people. So check this out. What we're going to do is, and this is how you could use LinkedIn for networking. I use this every day for networking. I'm going to go to the Arapahoe Community, there it comes right up, the Arapahoe Community College page on LinkedIn. And I have to click this because I'm an admin. Okay, so here's the ACC website on LinkedIn. What I'm going to do is I need to get Daniel now in touch with someone or multiple people who work as PTAs. But I also want to look at other profiles from PTA students because I want to see how they're putting their profiles together. Again, don't reinvent the wheel. Look at what other people have been doing. So on the Arapahoe Community College page, you'll see that there's an option here for alumni. I'm going to click alumni. Okay, there are 22,533 ACC alumni and actually current students as well that have LinkedIn profiles, okay? So what I'm gonna tell LinkedIn is, okay, out of those 22,533 profiles, show me those that have physical therapy assistant in the job title or in the education section or in the experience section. You could also write PTA. There's, sometimes you have to fool around with the search words that you use, but for this part, physical therapy assistant is where I'm going to go. And it's going to bring back 265 profiles that have some mention of physical therapy assisting in it. And if we scroll down, now we can start to look at other students, other people who graduated from ACC with a PTA degree or came back to ACC to do something completely different and once worked as PTAs. But in other words, we're really kind of honing in now on people who work in the industry or are in the current program or graduated from ACC with a PTA degree, but maybe are doing something else because they couldn't find a job. Either way, we need to know that information. So if we go up to Monica Sloan, and again, research shows that I'm going to typically click on profiles that have pictures. Again, I don't know why that is. It's just the research I've read, and I've confirmed it in multiple sources. So let's see what Monica's all about. So Monica is a physical therapist assistant at Integral Physical Therapy. Okay, so she's not a student anymore. She graduated. She's working in this area. She has just a really quick about section. PTA working in a small outpatient clinic. So if Daniel's interested in possibly working in an outpatient clinic, we've just found someone who's doing that kind of work. Her background is in physiology, neuroscience from CU Boulder. And then we can look at her experience, and you can see exactly what she did as she graduated and moved up. So if we go down to education, in 2013, Daniel, she graduated from CU Boulder with a degree in integrative physiology. And for whatever reason, a year later, started at ACC to get her degree as a PTA. And we can look at her profile and say, okay, well, she graduated in 2016, and she was able to get a job as a physical therapy assistant almost right out of college. But you'll see here, Daniel, that she doesn't have like a ton of experience, and she doesn't even have she's not even providing a lot of detail for her previous positions, even though she could. So that's the answer to your question, Daniel. Yes, build your LinkedIn profile today. Do it tonight. But don't reinvent the wheel. Look at what other PTA students and PTA graduates are doing, and also how are they putting together their own profile. None of this is like eavesdropping. This is all information that Monica wants people to know on LinkedIn. But I'm probably not going to get to see her contact information. I'm not. It's just giving me her LinkedIn profile. But now I'm like, okay, Monica is doing what I want to be doing. And her background, I'm really interested in, because I'm thinking about using some of those same moves to get into my career. So I really want to talk to her. Fine. At the very top of the page, and also another thing, you'll notice that there's no wallpaper background, nothing like that. There's nothing wrong with that, but you could I'll show you what some other people have done. Anyway, sorry, I just get excited about this stuff. I want to connect with Monica. So I'm going to click the connect button, and LinkedIn's going to say you can add a note to personalize your invitation to Monica Sloan. Yep, I want to do that. The free version of LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to send a note with your connect request, but it keeps you at 300 characters. If you have the premium plan, you could send an email's length text to the person. I actually think that the 300 character limit is a good thing, because it forces you to be brief, concise, and to the point. So in my note, I'm going to say, Monica, my name is Evan Kravitz. I'm a career counselor at ACC, your alma mater. I'm working with a student, Daniel, who's studying to do PTA. Any chance we can set up an informational interview to learn more about your career? Hopefully, when she looks at LinkedIn, she'll see the message and say, yeah, fine. And she'll write me back and say, yeah, Ev, have Daniel call me. Here's my phone number. Or she might say, nope, I don't have the time to do this right now. Either way, all you've lost is she didn't return the message request. But when she writes back, you're now starting to network, and now you're able to talk to people who went through the same program you're going in, and how to deal with getting that entry-level job in the field. And they could also show you, well, here's what I did on my resume. So LinkedIn is just invaluable for that. LinkedIn is also great to see how other people have done in their career fields. For instance, let's go back a page. Well, first, Daniel, did that help out?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. I work with a lot of graphic design students, and I'm trying to help them better understand how you get that first job in graphic design when you graduate. And so what I've done is I'll go to back to ACC, and I'll click on alumni, and I'm just going to type in graphic design. And it brings back a ton, like, what is that, 1,200 alumni profiles. But the reason I wanted to show you this is because in helping graphic design students market themselves, I've noticed that on a lot of the graphic design profiles, there's usually something artistic. that says something about their design style. And so it's been great to use LinkedIn to look at what other graphic design graduates from ACC and current students are doing for their profiles. But you can also see that a lot of graphic, you probably won't see it on this one, but it turns out that a lot of the profiles I look at for graphic design professionals, a lot of them have freelance experience, because that's typically, if you're having a tough time landing a job in graphic design, a lot of people will start their own graphic design business on the side. But anyway, I'm able to see that all through LinkedIn. One more example for you to show you how cool this is. I was working with a student. His name is Martin, who wants to work as a political lobbyist. All right, he wants to do something. He wants to give back to his community, and the way he wants to do that is through the behind-the-scenes world of politics. Okay, so I don't know anyone who does that. I mean, I know about it. I know about politics, but I don't know anyone who works as a lobbyist. So what Martin and I did was we went into LinkedIn, went to the ACC page, and went back to alumni, and I typed in lobbyist, thinking that nothing's going to come back. But instead, it gave me 9 different possibilities. And as I'm going through the profiles, I landed on Rachel's profile. I clicked on Rachel. If we go down to her education section, Rachel got an Associate of Arts degree in political science from ACC. She graduated in 2001 with it. That's the exact same program that Martin is about to start at ACC. But after she left ACC, she continued on immediately after to finish her 4-year degree in political science at MSU. That's the exact same route that Martin wants to take. He is actually looking at MSU to do the same thing. And so if we look at her career track, if we just go up to the top, she's president of Gold Leaf Strategies, LLC. And she gives a little description about, she owns her own lobbying firm in Denver. She's a lobbyist. All right, so Martin and I have to reach out to her. So I wonder if I could show you. So I sent her a connect request. Let's see. Hang on a second, folks. Bear with me. All right. It's not going to show it to me. Darn it. Hang on a second. Okay, it's not going to show it. Anyway, I sent Rachel a connect request with a note saying, "Hi, Rachel, I'm Evan Kravitz. I'm a career advisor at ACC. Any chance a student and my student Martin and I can have an informational interview with you? We're very much interested. He's very much interested in a career in political science." Click send. She wrote back either that day or the day later and said, "Yeah, absolutely." She actually came onto campus and sat with Martin and myself in my office for an hour and a half. She wasn't paid to do it. I didn't even give her a free t-shirt, but she came in and she spent all this time giving us a behind the scenes look at political lobbying and, what she did, to get her foot in the door when she was going through school and when she graduated. Again, the only thing we have to lose is that she doesn't respond to the message. But if she does, now our network, our career network is growing. And so if I go back into the presentation, where is it? Boom. This is Rachel. And I've sent many students to her for informational interviews. And so for another project I was doing, or actually for one of these presentations, I asked her, I said, "Rachel, can you tell me why you felt it was important for you to give up an hour and a half of your time to meet with a student and a career counselor that you didn't even know, total strangers?" And this is what she said, and I'm going to read it verbatim. Rachel said, "I have not gotten to where I am in my career all on my own. There have been many people that I've met in my life and career that have taken the time and effort to teach me something, develop a skill, mentor me, support me, and advocate for me. if I have the opportunity to provide the same benefits as someone else, then I feel it is the right thing to do. And it allows me to repay those individuals and entities that took the time to invest in me. This is Rachel's way of paying it forward. And now Martin has had a chance to meet someone who works in this career field and someone who has told Martin, keep in touch with me. As you're going through school, keep in touch, let me know how things are going, and, let me know how I can help out. I can't put a price tag on that. So LinkedIn, I just think is just the greatest, one of the best tools for informational interviews and networking. Again, the only thing you have to lose is the person doesn't get back to you. So just to recap, informational interviews. Keep it conversational, informal, and business casual. Don't put the pressure on yourself to go out and just impress. It's a career conversation. It's your way of getting research into how am I going to navigate this journey that I'm on. Bring your resume with you, but for review only. You're not applying for the job. You're saying, well, here's a resume I've created for this industry. Can you tell me if you think it's effective? Come prepared with questions and do your research ahead of time, but don't be afraid to follow the conversation in a new territory. So most of my students, when they go into an informational interview, they'll have a list of questions that they've come up with or that I've helped them come up with. But I always tell students, go with the conversation. So if your informational interview contact starts going in a different direction, but it does pertain to what you're trying to do, follow it. Go with the conversation. Ask about keeping in touch and additional info interview suggestions, and send a follow-up thank you email. So every person that my students meet for informational interviews, I actually send them a note as well saying, thank you for meeting with my student. I greatly appreciate it. So I'm losing my voice, but I'm more than happy to take your questions. I know I threw a lot at you. LinkedIn can be daunting for a lot of people. It's daunting for me. But again, I have just looked at how other people do their profiles, and I've read articles. There's a billion articles on LinkedIn, and I've been able to start to learn like maybe this much about LinkedIn, but I have a long way to go. But if you need help with interview practice, if you have a job interview coming up and you haven't interviewed in a while and you feel like you might be rusty, please get in touch with me. I could do practice interviews with you. Career research, which is part of the exploration process, and resume assistance. But both myself and my colleagues at ACC Career and Transfer Services, we do resumes every day, so we're more than happy to help out. But again, there's my phone number, my email address, and I'm more than happy to take any of your questions.
How would you best show a lack of employment? I've been on disability for 10 years and I'm coming back into the work field.
Right. So how many years?
10.
Okay. So I have found that employers won't necessarily count you out if you have an employment gap, because there's a lot of different reasons why people do that. Some people, they have kids and, I want to stay home with the kids and raise a family and maybe get back to my career at a different time. But yeah, other times you went out on disability, or you just fell out of love with what you were doing and you took some time to find yourself. Whatever the case may be, I usually advise on resumes and LinkedIn profiles, put the information on that's relevant. Okay. So, but even if your last job was 10 years ago, there are ways that you can craft your about section to explain, worked as an accountant for 15 years before my back injury, had to take some time off for physical therapy. And now I'm back and I'm ready to go. And here's what I have to offer the industry. There's all kinds of different creative ways that we can go about explaining gaps in employment. But for some jobs, it won't really be pertinent. So it depends on how far back the experience is and is it relevant to the job that you're going after. yeah, does that help at all?
It does. The other question I also have is, it's been so long ago, I don't remember the dates. What do I do when you can't remember the dates of employment?
You work with a career counselor like me, and I work with you to find out the dates.
Okay.
You don't, if that's a really good question, Shelley. You don't need to know that, well, I started at this firm on July 22nd, 1994, but through conversation, we could probably hone in on the year, around about the year where you started, or the month, but you don't need to know the specific day. But there are ways that I could, help you out with trying to figure out, okay, what year. And
Okay.
yeah, but yeah, Shelley, you don't need to know the exact certain date. We just need to get within the ballpark.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Also,
no
I
problem.
just want to, sorry, I just wanted to add to that. So, Shelley, also just two things that you can consider, as well as one nice thing is that since you are a student, you're maybe, especially if you're even pivoting to a new career field, a lot of your relevant experience is going to be your education. And so that's going to be more relevant, and that's also going to be more recent. So that can be a strength as well. And then there are also certain resume formats that Evan or I can also assist with, that aren't necessarily based on like chronological on time, but are based more on function and different categories of job fields, and showing the tasks that you have, where kind of like the time or the gaps in your work wouldn't be as apparent on it.
Okay, thank you.
No, Alyssa's absolutely correct, and I want to show you an example of that. I'll use myself as an example. Let me move this over here. You're looking at the resume that I used to get the job I have right now, and without going into a whole resume presentation, Alyssa was just mentioning that sometimes your education might take on more importance than your professional experience, and that was true for me. So you can see on my resume, I put education right near the top because I was leaving a career in journalism to go into higher education. And so I realized that my journalism experience isn't as important as this master's degree I just got in higher education. So that's why I decided to emphasize my education first. And then in my resume, I went into higher ed experience. But you'll notice on the second page, all the way back here is any of the journalism stuff. And even still, I'm not really giving details on my specific job duties. I'm saying I worked at CNN, here's my title, here are the dates I worked there. Because I wanted, and I did this strategically, because I wanted to put out the message that I could be a career counselor, I could be a higher education career counselor who has private industry experience. So Alyssa's absolutely right. And when you are putting your resume together, don't be afraid to move things around. For some career pursuits, your education is probably going to be more important or more relevant. For other career pursuits, you're going to want to start with your work experience. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. But if you've been out of the workforce for a number of years, but you're currently going through a certification process in a new field, or you're going for a 2-year degree, that stuff takes on importance because it shows that you have expertise and knowledge and skills in this new area that you're going into. So I'm really glad Alyssa mentioned that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I am transitioning to a different career path, and I used to work for a corporate company that involved like basically fast food. And now I'm transitioning to a field that has to do with health. And so my question is, should I still have on my resume my previous experience, even though it's kind of different towards like, my career path, because
Yeah.
I'm gravitating towards health and wellness and fitness. And I felt like it looked bad on my resume to show that I worked for a corporate company that has to do with fast food.
Boy, that is a good question. That is a good question.
Yeah, so I'm debating if I should just delete, on LinkedIn my previous experience, because, I don't really want to associate myself with fast food anymore. It had a lot to do with my career in food science. I just wanted to take on that position to help me get into the field. You
Right.
know,
But this is an opportunity also where we can craft your narrative. So it was important. One of the things I heard you say was that you're not necessarily proud that you worked in the fast food industry, given what you're doing now. But
yeah,
there's a story behind why you worked in the fast food industry for those years and why you're doing something completely different. And so, especially in LinkedIn, where you have that about section, former fast food employee who had a revelation one day and is now committed to doing this or this. So the previous fast food experience, the advantage to it is a couple, is that one, it shows that you can hold down a job, that you're hireable, that you've had to work, that you worked in a setting where you had to be there at a certain time, do a certain quality of work, and you had to customer service, things like that. But also as you're crafting your narrative and you're crafting how you're gonna, like when you go into interviews, well, tell us about yourself. We can work to kind of create a story, not create, but retell the story of how you got from here to here. Because I went through the same thing where it's like, crap, I have like all these years of journalism experience, but I want to be a career counselor now. So what do these have to do with each other? And that's where you start to figure out the transferable skills that, based on things I did, as a journalist, deadline pressure and, getting your facts right and time management and multitasking. There was all the stuff that I was able to translate over to the new career field. That yours is an awesome question. And I would love to work with you on that.
all right, yeah, that sounds good.